Double check that this is all live. Boom, boom, boom. Ooh, I meant to change the names. I have to do that manually. If there wasn't spell check, I'd be doomed as an adult. I'll tell you that right now. Just gonna head over to YouTube real quick. Oh, what did I just do? Okay, there we go. Okay. Sorry, my camera for some reason is flipped on Discord. I don't know why. I don't know how to fix it. So those words are just backwards for you guys. I fiddled around with it for about an hour the other day and I gave up. So. Okay, let's see. Okay, I think this must be it. Because I have Dan and Soul Ray, right? And you guys are both here. All right, we're gonna power on. If he shows up, then we will deal with that when it comes to it. All right, let me just double check one more thing.
Rock and roll.
Okay. Okay, first off, thanks guys for showing up for the first class. I know it's a little sparse in here, and it's a test again, and I sure do appreciate you guys putting a little trust in us to put this on for you, and hopefully you enjoy it. So, first off, we're going to go into color theory, and the big takeaways with color theory when it comes to painting models is that's kind of the, let's see, we need to show this one right here. Sorry, 1 second. Gotta make sure it's on the right camera. Okay, does everyone see that? Did that pop up for you? Should have. I don't think I can check. You guys see that introduction to color theory?
Yes. Yep.
So, as miniature painters, I don't think anyone really talks about this, but some of the fundamentals for painting is super important. So, and one of the main things is, color theory, line work, shadow, hue, light source, a bunch of those, right? And when you're talking about classical painting, all of those are heavily taken into account, mainly because it's a two-dimensional painting that they're talking about. So with us, most of that is inconsequential, right? The line work and all that, we're not painting in lines. The lines are automatic. That's how the model is. So throw that away. You don't need line work, right? Then there's a big one on using space effectively. That is important when you get to a model that has maybe less detail than um, you'd like to see, where you have to paint in something interesting. That's why I like to paint complex models, is because they're actually easier to paint for that very reason. So we can take that and throw it away because that's not useful. So the big three things are color theory, light source, shadows, right? Those actually affect our models incredibly. So, but the most important one to start with is just generalized color theory, because how we perceive a model, um, how it interacts with the light and the colors that come back to us, heavily narrates the model, right? So, like when I'm doing a gross boy, cool colors, green, and they're gross, they're visceral, right? The bones are very like the pastel of them, they're eerie, right? Or if I'm doing like a really happy fun model, I don't think I have those. I guess you could consider uh, this guy here would be a happy fun model. You guys can't see this because I'm dumb, but so I'll swap that back real quick. So when we're talking about like a fun, vibrant model, this is something that I would consider as like it invokes a sense of like I don't know, just stern stoicism, like hardcore rock star, like bold use of colors, right? Bold green and bold red, and then everything else is neutral. And the reason we do these kind of things is because I want those individualized items to really pop out when you view it. Same reason for this kind of gross death guard, right? I want the model to just read as gross, right? Just right out of the gate, I want it to look disgusting. And then the bold use of colors to really highlight the different things, like the leeches on this guy or his gross kind of toxic claws and the boils. So, color theory plays heavily into that, and we're just going to do a quick, brief overview of that to try and help to teach your brain to kind of automatically do it. So, we all know what color is. It's a property of light. So when light hits color, it reflects back exactly what that color is showing, right? White is all the colors, black is the absence of all frequencies of color, right? So the color wheel is three primary colors, right? Yellow, red, and blue. You could also call it cyan, magenta, and kind of a lime green. I can't remember what the other color is called. But these three main colors helps us to start designing what we want to use. And if you don't have one yet, I highly recommend you getting one. They're really easy to function. You can get them at Hobby Lobby or Michael's or even Amazon, and they cost like a couple bucks. So when we're talking about um, secondary colors, we're talking about orange, the greens, the violet. Those are your in-between colors, right? So when you're making colors, you can quite literally, even in acrylics, have three bottles of paint. I would argue tones and hues and shades are really difficult to do with this. But theoretically, if you just had those three colors, you can make all the other colors. And that practice is how I began painting because I was filthy poor. And it really helps to train you to make your own colors. The problem with being a miniatures painter is usually you're a war gamer painter, so you're just pumping out models, and so it's really hard to get an exact color every time if you're mixing. So if you need multiple colors, buy multiple colors. It makes your life easy. But to know how to mix these colors is really important because sometimes you just need it for a little pop here and there. So hue is another name for color, and then saturation is really important. So these two terms, mainly saturation, is like how perfectly pure a color is, right? So like the Doomfire magenta is like the most saturated pink you can get. It is like that is pink down to its core. A lot of the contrast paints function like that. They are high saturation. And almost all of your base colors right out of the jar, like your basic red, your basic blue, your basic yellows, right? All of those are incredibly high saturation colors. So when we move on from using those colors and we want to mix them or tint them, you always want to try and use a pure color and then mix it with white or black or a brown. And that way you get the most out of that color saturation. When you start using pre-diluted colors and you try and mix into them, sometimes the color will get a little muddled and it's a little harder to control. So a tint is a color made by mixing it with white, right? So when we are making a highlight, like for instance, when we go to paint the pink on the leaves, that will be a tint when we do the final highlight with the dry brush. So that's a perfect example of a tint. So a shade, right? So whenever I say pick your three colors, your highlight, also known as tint, your midtone, which is basically your highest saturated color, and then a shade. And a shade is your highest saturated color mixed with black or the equivalent, right? So knowing these and how to manipulate your base tone to a shade and to a highlight is really important. One, so you don't have to buy like 15 different colors for one set of colors. You can push your paints a little further, but while painting, you can add a little bit of white, and you can get kind of you have your midtone, and then you can get kind of your pre-highlight midtone, and then you can highlight, and you can stack that as a gradient. And that's how you can really get really good highlights, and the opposite is true for your shades, right? So a tone is any color mixing with gray. I don't generally make tones. I'll buy tones. Tones are just a lot easier to purchase. Like most of these inner circle ones, they're great colors. They're useful, like this lilac here. These kind of greenish, orangish, yellowish, pastel-y tones. Those ones are really hard to make, so I'll buy those as well. But you can make it by just mixing gray. So to go into color schemes, this is kind of the relationship between the colors and how they act. Warm tones are your red to your yellow, and this is a perfect example of that. We see in here that there is green and whatnot, but if you were to zoom in on this, it would be just the smallest touch of green to really keep that warm tone. And warm paint schemes really invoke a sense of, you know, if you play Magic the Gathering, you'll notice all of the Plains cards, the white cards, the holy cards, the angel cards almost are predominantly warm tone because they want to invoke that kind of, celestial feeling, right? And the opposite is true for the other colors, and those are the cool colors. So that's going to go from green to violet. So, and this is a perfect example, cool tones kind of represent the sadder emotions in our life, right? You don't see McDonald's painted blue for a reason. You see them with red and yellow because that's what invokes joy and hunger. The opposite is true. So, cool colors. This one in particular, they're having a bad family day. We can all imagine that something bad has happened, right? And that's what those colors evoke, right? Is this sense of eeriness, this mood, this like dampened feeling. So moving on from those are just the two major groups. We get analogous colors. So in this example, analogous is generally you pick one color and then you pick two colors next to it, or you can pick an in-between here and pick two colors and then two colors. Analogous color schemes are kind of hard to pull off. I don't generally do them too often. If you do it right, you can get some really cool effects. And a couple of these as examples is this flower here. Analogous has kind of I don't know, I'm trying to think like a lava, right? So if you did a model with like a bunch of lava or fiery tones and they're predominantly red, orange, and yellow, that would be an analogous scheme. And that's why those kind of evoke a lot of, strong, fiery feelings. So my favorite to use is complementary or split complementary. We'll start with complementary. That is exactly the direct opposite of the color that you're using, right? So I'm going to add in just a little extra bit of information with these different schemes, and that's going to be what I call a 60-30-10 rule, right? So the 60-30-10 rule, when we apply it to our models, is 60% of the model is going to be our first color, right? So if I was going to do, say, a split complementary, I would choose yellow would be 60% of the model, and then 30% would be violet, and then 10% would this is what I like about split complementary is you then do another one next to it, right? Or that 10% is just an additional color that helps vibe with all these three. For the 10%, you could do a blue green here, you could do a red, you could even do a yellow orange as well. Just something that's going to support these two strong colors, right? You can do green. It looks okay, but it's best to kind of choose something that's next to them when you're doing exactly complementary. So complementary is also really good for high light and shadows. So this example is kind of showing it where the light source is coming from this left side and it's hitting here, and that's why you get this kind of yellowish hue. And the exact opposite tone is that purple, which is your shadow. So split complementary really lends itself well to when you're doing OSL or a strong light source. So if you have, one of your models walking over a toxic swamp, you can do a bright green coming from the bottom and then do a really vibrant, bright purple on the backside, right? So split complementary, this is my absolute favorite. This is why I try and do in all of my models. It's easy to paint and it's easy to kind of attribute, okay, red is my primary, so I'll do 60% red, and then I'll do 30% blue green, and then 10%, sorry, I'm doing this wrong. 60 20 10 is what I should be saying, or 50 30 10. And then that little extra detail there would be your 10%, right? So in this, it just invokes kind of a sense of belonging, if that makes sense. Like all the colors belong there. Like when you see a model that is perfectly used split complementary and it's effective, it just makes sense, right? Like whenever you look at any GW models and their box art is almost exactly split complementary, almost all of them. So triad, I don't use this too often, but this is a very good style. It's kind of a more spread split complementary, so then you can get, really vibrant, like very poppy, catching color tones, and they invoke, a lot of the propaganda art in the 40s, 50s, and 60s throughout the world used triadic colors. So just like this Marilyn Monroe. But you can keep going. You can go into double split complementary, tetrad, double complementary. You can keep going. You can keep pushing it. The real takeaway from all of this is to kind of find the color that you want to use, and then you can use that color. And there's a bunch of different online resources. I personally like using ChatGPT or any other AI, and it'll show you like, hey, this is my primary color. Can you show me what the complementary, monochromatic, analogous, triad, tetrad, what would those schemes look like? And it'll just give you color swatches. So, and then you can make better decisions after that. So, a couple examples of different really good uses of color. I highly recommend before you start painting to really think through, exactly how you want your painting to come across and what mood you're trying to evoke with it, right? So, with that, does anyone have any questions? Not to be super long-winded, but color theory is, I feel, very important and really helps to build a strong foundation. So,
I might be getting ahead of myself here, but what are those categories are we going to be using today?
So we are going to be doing split complementary, and my word, I had my color wheel just a second ago. All right. But yeah, this will be split complementary with the primary color actually being the blue, right? So then if we go across from blue, let me pull that back up for just me so I make sure I do this right. So we go right across from blue, we get red, orange, and yellow, right? So what we've done is we've taken the red orange and we've just brightened it up a little bit more, right? We've shifted a tad over to the red side of things, and that's where we're getting the pink, right? And then the yellow orange for the bluish um, from the opposite side. Gosh, I wish I had my color wheel. It has disappeared. But yeah, this is our primary color, which is the blue, which would be the 60% of the model here, more or less. And then the next one would be this orange here, which is going to be the 30% of the model, and then our 10% is our pink. So that is where primarily most of our color is coming from, our split complementary. So after painting this, I've kind of looked through this, and I did it in such a way that would be easy to paint and easy to understand. Personally, I would use these spirals and do OSL lighting, specifically with either the blue to give it more of the 60% and use up more of this space here, along with making this vine here really bright green, along with making these a more bright and saturated green, along with some of these horns to kind of really help push more of the color from this monochromatic wood. But yes, the scheme we were doing is split complementary, kind of pushing that split complementary almost into a triadic. We're kind of in between the triad. So if this is normal split complementary aside from blue, we're just pushing it a little bit more on the color wheel. So yeah, great question. If that's all on color theory, we will move on to a couple of the terms that I'll be using in this class and others on kind of the viscosity of paints and the meaning behind glaze, layer, wet blend, and base. So to start us off, I'm going to grab just this brown here, and we'll put a little daub here. Now straight out of the bottle, almost every time is a base, right? So the advantages of basing, or using a base paint. So base, just I think of as basic, out of the bottle, nothing has changed, really thick, really just opaque. When I put on this paper towel, you'll see a very strong pigmentation on the very tip, and then as I drag it away, you'll see that it kind of cakes up and I lose all transparency behind it, right? So, and the advantage of base painting is basing your model. So blocking in your colors, I generally will use straight out of the bottle, maybe with a little bit of little drop of water. And the reason being is because the saturation of this is really thick, right? So that means I only have to do maybe 1 or 2 coats. But the disadvantages of this is if you're not careful, you can leave really high pigmentation like valleys and ridges in on your model, which will leave a texture, right? So that's the first level. That would be a base, right? Now the next level is what I would call a layer, right? So I'm just going to take just the smallest amount of water, right? Basically the water that's just in my brush, and I'll grab a little bit more of this paint. I'll drag it out a bit on my wet palette. And do you see on my wet palette how it's nearly translucent in the middle? And as I move it to the left and the right, it kind of peaks up, right? So this is what you would call a layer. A lot of people will do this on their thumb as well, right? I like to use a paper towel or the model itself. If you can see, it's way less saturated, right? It flows a little bit better, but not, to the extent that it's a glaze yet. So I'll grab a little of this and I'll show you on the model how that reacts to it. So we'll find a nice spot here. So, got a little bit on there. So do you see the translucency difference on that? Let's see if I can get it to focus. So the nice thing about layers is you can layer them. So with I would say they're like maybe 60% opaque, right? So they leave pigment behind just enough where it will shade the tone underneath, and then you can start building upon it, right? So every layer I put on will be just a little bit darker. So that is what is considered a layer. So Going to the next one is what is known as a glaze. So I'm going to clean my brush a little bit here to make sure that we have a nice test. And I'm going to take even more water, right? So if that's the base and that's the layer right here, this little bit of water here, I'll add it to it and I'll dry off my brush because it's heavily saturated with it. And this one is going to have the least amount of paint. Do you see how it's almost basically just water with just a hair of pigment, right? So we're talking about the least saturated. And what glazing is good for is, again, doing kind of that layering, right? So when you see those really impressive models online, they will glaze for hours and hours and hours because they just want to barely make a difference, right? And the biggest telltale sign with glazing is it really only changes the color at the end of your stroke, right? So, and what I mean by that is I can kind of push this paint around and it only leaves the color, the pigment at the end, right? So that's a big thing with really professional painters is they just glaze everything and they'll spend 10,000 hours on it, right? There isn't much difference between a wash, right, or a shade from a glaze. There really isn't much difference. The only difference is the shade that you buy from the store maintains its heavily saturated pigmentation when it recesses, right? But its translucency over the model is pretty much the same as a glaze, right? So when you're buying and purchasing paints specifically from Citadel, they actually they label these right on the can. So we have the base here, we have the layer here. They don't have a glaze, but I would argue that if you add a hair of water to any layer paints, they become a glaze. So, any questions about that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
With the base layer, when you say that you don't like thin it out really at all, do you have any issues with like details getting hidden with that?
So the important part with basing is I'm trying to reduce as many layers as I have to when I'm blocking in all my colors. And it's a great question. You want to thin it just enough where you can still control it, right? Where you're not adding texture. To kind of go into further detail, each of these paints have you can think of them as pigment particles or even pigment powder, and they're in a translucent medium, whether that's water or, you know, acrylic medium. But that pigmentation, the drier it is, the more they kind of stack up, almost like wet sand on a beach, right? But if you add water, it kind of makes those less likely to group up and stack, and they'll then flow nicer. So most times it depends on what paint product you're using and from what brand. Basing with Citadel, I almost always add 1 or 2 drops of water to every paintbrush stroke or paintbrush like refill, right? Because I've noticed those have a tendency to really stack pigment and create a texture, right? Vallejo Game Color specifically comes right out of the bottle, almost a layer, a little less than a layer. So it's almost perfect to go right onto the model, right? But you really have to play it by ear. If you notice that, like, when your paint is almost drying before you're done setting it, that's a telltale sign that you need to add a little bit more water, um, or else you're going to kind of lose control and create peaks and valleys. So, really good question. I hope that answered it. It was a little long winded.
Yeah, and so for the lighter colors, I noticed that if I'm trying to paint a
Yes.
model like
Oh,
yellow
yeah.
or something, then you can't really do just one layer.
Yep.
You know, I find myself doing layer after layer after layer, and then of
Yep.
course you lose the detail.
So white and yellow are the worst at that. There's just really hard to get a high saturation and a good coverage with um, white and yellow specifically. Uh, I'll tell you now, you'll have to do at least 2 layers minimum of almost all the colors, but with white and yellow specifically, 3, maybe 4 layers, and you'll just have to thin it enough that you're not creating a texture. It's just one of those colors. I would never paint a White Scars army or an Imperial Fist army. I just wouldn't do it unless I'm getting paid a ton of money, because it takes forever to block in those colors. But really good question. So any other questions on just the different kind of levels of paint, the how much medium or water we're adding to them to kind of get more control of what we're trying to do?
Are you typically trying to go from like the darker shade to lighter, or lighter to darker?
Generally, I like to start out at a mid-tone shade. So if I plan to take the color darker, it's way easier to take a color darker than it is to bring it up brighter. So if you're planning to do a model with a lot of yellow and whites, I would almost start at with a primer that's like a white or a uh, almost a cream color or gray, because then you can bring that up a lot easier, and instead of doing exactly the paint out of the bottle, you'll be tinting the primer. So that's a really good question. I almost never paint from black. I think black primer is the fastest way to just make painting miserable, because you're just going to be putting layer and layer over black. So really good question. Yeah, starting from a white or even a mid-tone is where you would want to start most paintings.
So what do you think of zenithal priming then?
Zenithal priming is fantastic, because what it does is it automatically shows you your shadows and your valleys. So when you're basing, if you're using a layer or a contrast paint, it automatically will tone. It'll do your brighter tone, where it's nice and bright on the top, and then that same tone will shade your black on the bottom. And so you can get away with maybe 1 or 2 passes of contrast paint and get those really nice highlights done and the really nice shadows already done. So Zenithal is, I almost do all of my paintings with Zenithal, even if I'm going to completely replace the white or the black. I'll still do it because it's just nice to visually see how the light is hitting the model, right? So really good
Okay, so you don't
question.
mind black if
Um,
it's zenithal.
Black, so when I do my Zenithal sprays, I will do black on the bottom, and I will be just exactly directly black, and then I'll do the whole model black, and then I'll start with a gray, like a nice dark gray, and I'll just kind of go around almost like a 90-degree from the original light source. So I'll go around like this, because then that gray, dark gray, will give me a nice mid-tone from the jet black and eventually to the white. And then I'll start pivoting. I'll add a little more white to my airbrush, and I'll just keep moving like this until I get to pure white, and then I'm just doing this with pure white. I hope that makes sense, just with the angle of my airbrush, right?
Yeah.
So great questions. Anything else? Alrighty. So before we start painting, is there any questions about the process, or I know I had a couple questions in the chat on how to not drop the model a million times. I use this Citadel holder, and with resin specifically, you have to use super glue, not the normal bonding glue that you use with other Citadel products or models. What this glue does is it melts the plastic on both sides and bonds it together. Unfortunately, this doesn't melt resin. So the only way to mechanically attach resin to another piece of plastic is to use super glue, or to actually put resin on it and cure it with UV light. So that's how I do it. There's another way to hold models, and I see it a lot. You can get whiteboard tack. It's I had some around here at one point, but it's this kind of sticky substance. You can pull it and stretch it and reuse it quite a bit. And you can get a nice good ball of it, and you can stick it on the bottom of the base or on the model itself, and then you can use a prescription bottle. I've seen people use the bottom of their paint bottle. You can do a bottle cap, a toothpick. That's a nice versatile way if you're trying to paint just like a single, like a head, or maybe just a weapon or an arm, and then attach it later. So I love this little handle. I try and use it whenever I can. Couldn't do it with the big boys, but that was mainly just trying not to ruin paint and a lot of holding. So, and then I believe there was another question in the chat as well on brush maintenance. I will go over that probably near the end of the video, where I can show you exactly how I clean up my brushes. So, any other concepts or techniques, kind of broad scope, before we begin painting? Alrighty then, let's get to it. So, how we're going to start this is we're going to start with our brown, our grunge brown. So, put a good amount on your wet palette here, probably about 2 or 3 drops, and then get your nice fat belly brush ready, and we're going to do some basing. We're going to do some blocking in, and I'll make sure to allow everyone to have a little bit of a moment to be able to keep up. Okay, so I'm gonna add, I'll move this over so you guys can kind of see how I manipulate my water here. So I do 2 wash basins, right? So I have my pre-wash and then my final wash, and then that way this water will get gross and icky and full of a bunch of nonsense, but this one will remain clean. And I do that so I can always grab nice clean water when I'm adding water to paints. So we're going to make this into almost a layer, but kind of maintain it as a base, right? Because since this is zenithal spray, we don't have to do a whole lot of work here. We just have to block in, right? So we are going to add just a touch more water, and let me show you kind of exactly what we're going for here. So we're going to let that kind of go into the recesses here and let it naturally kind of coat over the mini. I'm not going to fight it too much. We're going to make it really liquidy. We're going to push it around. We almost want to just barely tint this entire model brown, because our next steps will then apply dry washing or dry brushing, and that will in turn do most of the hard work, most of the painting. What we're doing right now is just getting that nice mid-tone set in place, and that'll save us a bunch of time later. So, and again, you can choose what colors you want to do on your model. You can follow me exactly if you want, or if you want to change something from bark to maybe a vine, or you want to make something more of a leaf color, feel free. It's your model at the end of the day, so whatever you want it to look like, make it happen. So, and this also isn't a race as well. I'm just slopping it on. You can be kind of messy at this stage and not have to worry about it. The reason we're doing this bark first is because it's the largest surface area of the model, and I kind of have 2 different rules. If the largest surface area is not underneath an item, right, or above an item, in terms of like this skin is below the bark, if this skin was everywhere, I would probably start with the skin first. So I almost always paint the lowest level of a model in terms of the actual 3 dimensions of it. But with the bark being mostly on the bottom, we can knock it out, no problem, and worry about that skin in another step. So, and feel free to spit out any questions or if you're having any kind of trouble, and I will help you the best I can. And try your best just to get a nice thin layer across all of this. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be heavily saturated. A lot of the work is being done already by the Zenithil spray, which is saving us a ton of time. We're just trying to tint it brown instead of gray, white, and black. So that's really the main goal of what we're doing right now.
Oh, I don't know the right words necessarily to ask this question, but we'll see here.
Yeah.
How evenly is your paint layer going on?
So
I guess I'm trying to like almost figure out like if I made my paint too watery and it's pooling up some in like the ridges of the bark.
if you have your camera on, you can show me your model real quick, or I can kind of explain. If it's really pulling deeply into the recesses, that's okay. It's almost like a really, really thin layer is what I'm aiming for, right? So if you're getting a lot of pigment that's recessing, that's not a bad thing. You can grab it out and put it in. If it's super watery, also not a bad thing. You just might have to go back through with that same kind of viscosity after it's a little drier and give it another pass through. Mainly what we're doing here is trying to get those recesses that are jet black. We're just tinting that just a nice warmer brown. Almost all of the other surfaces, the white surfaces, are going to be painted with the dry brush. So it's not too big of a deal if it's extra watery.
Fair enough.
I hope that kind of answers that question.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
I guess for this layer, like your goal is to not make it too watery. Like I should just probably, I think I'd just drag some extra paint in there. And
Yeah.
Would you compare like the paint you're using to like skim milk, whole milk? What consistency would you
I would say it's a little less than skim milk. So almost 2 parts skim milk, maybe 1 part water, if that
Okay.
makes sense. So it's between a layer and a glaze right now. I think I misspoke early and said a base between a base and a layer, but I've since added a little bit more water.
How is a type of milk helpful if we just drink oat milk?
Oat milk. It is basically 1 part oat milk and like 5 parts water. Or you know that like when the oat milk settles, it's that top inch of oat milk. So, and you can get this paint on other surfaces. Don't worry too much about it. We're gonna paint over most of this, and it's also not bad to have a warm undertone. The only place I would try your best to avoid painting is actually going to be the skin, because that skin is a direct contrast to brown. That blue will be kind of hard to hide, whereas the yellow and oranges and pinks, a little brown undertone won't hurt those. And I also try and work section by section as well. I do that because I want that whole plane that you're painting, whether it's like her one arm or maybe the wreath around her or her kind of, crown of thorns. paint each one of those all at the same time, because if you try and paint it partially, something might dry and you might just be moving around paint, and that's the fastest way to build up pigment and also to rip off a really nice layer you've already put down. Whoops, that's way too much paint, so we're going to take that down just a hair. I know my camera isn't really wanting to focus just right. Let's get this nice. I might have to move this out of the way a little bit. So this is kind of what I got so far. That's what we're looking for, just a really nice translucent warm brown kind of throughout the model. But yeah. And don't be scared. Just send it. Any kind of mistakes that come up is just an opportunity for me to help you more. This is kind of the annoying bit. This is not the fun part. This is the foundation step, I would say. Just try your best to find all the little different spots with brown on them, or bark, or what you want it to be. How's everyone doing? You guys getting close?
Alright, so we want the arms, the staff, the horns, or what is, I don't remember what is supposed to be
So
brown.
her crown, her kind of basically the whole, what I will call from now on just the dress of bark, and her arms and the little wreath around her back is what I have painted brown. You can also do the staff if you'd like. I painted my staff black last time. I might change that this time. But yeah, just kind of her dress, her arms, her cowl, her thorns on her head. Try your best not to paint the skin. That's about the only thing that can get a little frustrating, but we can always fix that as well. And you can't make it too translucent, but you can over pigment it a little bit. But again, our following steps will kind of reinforce the shadows and reinforce the highlights, so it's not too big of a deal either. This is kind of a subtle tint, changing it from gray and white and black to just kind of a brown. That's the goal here. So I know I might be a little faster than others, so I'm not trying to, I won't hustle you. You guys take your time. So I'll just kind of hold this here and rotate it. And so if you guys have any, let's see if I can get it to focus just nice. Let's see, right. Maybe we'll do a white background, maybe that'll help.
Are you painting the leaves too, even though you know they're not going to be brown?
I'm not painting the leaves, but you can. It really, at this point, the leaves, since it's a warm tone, the brown undertone will only give it more depth, if anything. I'm avoiding it because I really want mine to be like super ultra pink. Man, my camera does not want to play nice today. Let's see, I have to go up a little higher. Get more of an angle on it. Come on. You can do it. There we go.
I'm extra bummed because our local game store is out of the pink one.
I know. That's okay. I can hook you up with another pink. If you have any red, we'll make it happen.
There's an unbelievable number.
We have apparently an unbelievable number of pinks, but
just not bright pink.
not
Yeah, I had to go buy it too. I was like, I really want this to be pink. Not.
Have that. We don't have the because it was Citadels, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just don't have Citadels, but we have.
It's like a bubblegum pink.
What's funny when it comes out, it's almost like a red too. So
yeah, you will like what they're saying.
So it's almost, it really is just kind of a really bright reddish magenta, like it's like printer ink red, you know.
Okay.
Okay. So, and I mentioned this before we started, but if you have Agrax Earthshade, I forgot to add it to the list. If you don't, that's totally okay, because I'll show you how to do it with the paints that were on the original list. But if you have Agrax Earthshade, that'll save you a ton of time, because that will be the shade for the bark.
Are you making the hands bark as well, or those?
Yeah, yeah. You could. What it looks like is she's almost. This is almost a tree that kind of exploded out when she inherited. Is kind of what I look like it as. You definitely could do blue hands if you want. That'd be pretty cool. They're just still. They're kind of gnarly, like almost very rootish. So I decided to do mine brown as well. But you can do blue hands if you'd like as well. Life is good. And I currently have the stream set up so it's not showing Discord, so if you want to show your progress, you're more than welcome to without it being streamed. Or if you want to say, hey to the world, I'm doing this, I can also show it on stream. It's up to you guys. All right, Dan, let's see how it's going. Ooh, nice. Oh, you're still muted.
Thanks. I think I took your initial instruction and rolled with that between a layer and a base. So I went a little.
No, you're totally fine. You're totally fine. If anything, it might turn out to be a more contrasty end result. So I just did it to help kind of keep the highlight, but honestly, you're totally fine. This is just the base layer.
Nice.
It looks good though. Very clean painting. So how's everyone doing? What's that?
I have a quick question. So when it comes to basing, this is a step that I've always kind of struggled with when it comes to like missing small areas or missing like crevices or details.
Sure.
How often do you find that is a problem? Do you find yourself going back and like fixing it later, or is that typically covered up in future steps?
That's a great question, because it is quite literally something that I do every single model. With more experience, you do it less often. That's the honest truth. Is you're gonna miss that little recess, that one little detail that, oh, I was supposed to put this. It happens on every model. The more models you paint, the less often it happens. But like, for example here, let's do this guy. We'll do one of these guys. So these are kind of in process painting. This isn't complete yet. This still has a lot of detail work to be done on it and just make it more and more gross. For instance, right here underneath the shoulder blade here, I would want it to be even darker than it is right now currently. So I have to go in and add some shade to there. Same thing in this recess here and up there. More into here, more into there. But that's just a long part of the process, is finding those little spots and trying your best. Planning how you paint your model can help to mitigate some of these things. Oil washes are a great way to just really reduce a lot of the like going back and forth. This one is basically 5 minutes of painting on it. You can kind of see my process here as I'm going through and I'm starting to do the shading here. Just trying to get the dark portions in first. I'd do that here. I did it here. And it's just one of those things that as I'm painting, I generally will do my mid-tone, which would be all this green here. And then I'll start adding in shade. So doing the little recessed dark spots are way easier to do first than try and do them like when the model's almost done. So the best way to mitigate those kind of things is start mid-tone, put your shades in, and then build up your mid-tones and highlights. Is kind of, every model's a little different, but that's mainly how I paint most things. So that's a good question. Alrighty, how we doing, guys? Need another 5 minutes? Getting close? Everyone ready for the next step?
Almost. I'm doing the horns.
Okay.
I'm
ready.
Yeah.
in detailing, or finding smaller areas that I may have missed.
Yep.
Well, the first time.
Perfect. We'll give Ray just another second here. Those that are ready, your next paint you're going to be putting on your palette, we'll just get those ready, is going to be your barbarian skin. So we don't need a ton of this, maybe 2 or 3 drops. It's a nice warm tan, and then we will get some of our elfic flesh. We'll get a couple drops of that as well. The elfic flesh is what we're going to make all of our tints with, all of our highlight colors with. So feel free to put a little bit more on there as well. So what we're going to do is, I don't know if you guys have seen a couple of my TikToks, but we're going to do what I call the pre-wash highlight, right? And to give a little background to the purpose of this next step is it kind of plays a role of doing 3 things at once, right? It gives you a gradient from your darkest tone all the way to almost your brightest tone, right? Because no matter what, when we do a shade, it's going to tint everything down kind of a level, right? So right now we have this nice warm mid-tone. What we're going to do is we're going to then brighten that up just a hair more, and then we'll wash it, and that'll bring all of it down, and then we'll do our final highlight on it, right? Does everyone follow kind of the process there?
Yep.
Sweet. So when you're ready, grab your dry brush. You'll need 3. This one is going to do all of the bark and all of the, pretty much all of the brown. And we'll also use it to highlight the black staff if you're going to do a black staff with me. So grab just a hair of our original tone, and we're going to actually do, and try your best not get it right from the source. The less liquid in your dry brush, the better. We're going to grab just a touch of that. We're going to rub that out, right? So if you can kind of see what I did there, I got rid of almost all of it, and I left just a bit of that, right, where it's still showing on the paper towel as I drag. And then I'm going to grab the next tone, and what this is doing is it's going to kind of paint in a middle gradient, right, in between the two. Do you see how that looks? So it's not exactly the original brown we put on, but it's a little step up So we've added just a little bit of white. And then the fun part, you're just going to go over and just start dry brushing. I recommend only dry brushing against the ridges on one way. So if the light is coming from this way, you're just going to drag that down against the ridges. And with this step, you can also be pretty generous. Try your best not to have your dry brush too wet. When it seems like you're not putting anything on the model, just add a little bit more paint and then dry it off again. And this is where we're going to get most of our kind of mid-tone warmth at, right? We're trying to warm up these darker spots.
Sorry, one more time. So we take the dry brush of the grunge brown.
Correct.
And then get most of that off. And then instead of putting it on the model,
Then you'll do barbarian skin.
And then just a hair of the barbarian skin, correct.
Okay, and we're not doing anything with the elfish one.
Nothing with the elfish yet. Yep. Because that one we're going to... This is how you gradient up with just dry brushing. So it's a very fast way to do it.
Okay, and none of the paint is diluted at all?
None of it's diluted. If anything, you want it as dry as you can get it. And then also dry your dry brush. You almost want it to look like it's not doing anything to the paper towel. Like that's what mine's doing right now. Is it's not leaving any kind of substance behind.
Okay.
So you should do two or three passes before you actually see kind of a shift in the color of the model. And you're going to run out of paint quite often with this method. So you're just going to take a little bit of the brown, a little bit of the barbarian skin, and you'll do the exact same process a couple times, right?
Oh, you grab brown and the barbarian at the same time.
Yeah. So I just wanted the barbarian in the brush to start with, because then it's as I'm painting it, it'll leave it and we're using the dry brush to mix a paint as we're putting it on, kind of deal. It's just a quick way to kind of build that mid-tone. And again, this step, you can't mess it up. So it's just kind of, if anything, bringing more of that mid-tone in before we do the next highlight to kind of give the whole model a really nice center tone before we put on the highlight and then wash it. And this is the fun part. I could do this for hours. For me, this is the fun part. So just enjoy it. Try your best not to dry brush on any area of the model that we don't want brown on, which is basically just her chest and neck and the basically her skin. You can get it right on her face as well. This is a good spot to paint her face a little bit more if you missed it, because it looked like I missed it with my initial paint. And it might be going on a little bit darker than where the recesses are, and that's perfectly fine, because when we go to shade, we're going to then hit those spots with the shade, so we're not worried about it right now. Right now we're just building nice complex layers of saturation with our brown.
I'll the dry brush with the previous step.
Yeah, no, that's why you do the previous steps.
It's really important you don't put any liquid in your dry brush. That's why it's we're going to be using 3 different ones, because we can't really wash them in between. So this is basically just reinforcing our mid-tone while trying to salvage a lot of that zenithal black spray still that we can. And then we'll, of course, reinforce the contrast with our shade after we do the highlight step after this. So, and this is just fun. Are you guys having fun? That's important.
I am.
Yeah, it's fun.
Good.
Me too.
This is my funnest way to paint, is just, or my favorite way to paint is dry brushing and washing. And I do it with a lot of my models. It's quick and easy and it's fun.
Are you treating the whole area equally as you dry brush, or are there particular points that you're trying to bring out more with the highlight than others?
No, that's a good question. So the one places I'm avoiding is basically where all of our shadows are at. So if I was to turn this model upside down, you can kind of see that that dark brown is still present in all of the recesses. So really I'm treating it going down where the light source is, right? I'll be doing a lot here at the triangle, right? But her face and two arms is what I call the lighting triangle. But yeah, this is just kind of a quick step to reinforce the midtones while leaving all of these nice, rich, dark tones underneath. So if you're not seeing much change in your model, then that's exactly when we're going to move to the next step. And I'm not going to try and rush you. I'll just explain what I'm doing, and I'll re-explain if you aren't ready yet. Life is good. So we're going to take a little bit of the barbarian flesh, put that into the brush, get rid of it, setting the tone for the elfic flesh. And the reason I put it in first is I like to set it into the paper towel while it's still a little fresh, right? And then when I grab my elfic, I'll put it in that same spot and I'll mix it together. But I always kind of leave the brighter tone on the top. Again, just kind of things I do. I don't know why I do it. It's just how I do it.
This is the same brush as
Same
the same dry
exact brush. Yep, same exact brush.
Okay.
That's what's nice is we're using it to actually mix colors onto it. Now this one, every time you go up in gradient, right? So when I'm going from mid-tone all the way up, I'm slowly adding a little bit in, and then I'm adding a little bit of the previous color, and then I'll gradually go up. And you'll want to dry brush less and less. This is really important. You don't want to cover up your previous tone completely. You want to go maybe 10 or 20% less overall. And then you start getting more and more specific of how that edge is catching the light. Because now what we're doing is we're painting in where the light's hitting, right? So I'm being really careful to just hitting those raised surfaces. I'm not trying to be aggressive with these highlights. I'm just naturally wherever I think the light is going to be hitting. So the tops of things, the tops of these branches, the top of her backside of her dress, the tops of the arms, tops of the fingers, right? Just where the light is going to be hitting it. And I'm just going to be mixing a little bit of these. If you put too much on, totally fine, because if you dry brush too much in this stage, you just shade it and it'll fix it immediately. And then on your next pass, you can be a little more reserved. So again, just doing one strokes from the light source where it's coming from down. So in this model, it would be, I'm always doing strokes with the dry brush from the head down, right? But all over the model. So always starting higher and then going down. You don't want to go up, right? Because highlights aren't in shadows. They're just right above it. So, and if you're not seeing any change, that means you just need to add a little more white and then just keep going. it's better to be more reserved with the amount of paint on your dry brush than to have too much. And you'll really start to see these edges, the closer and closer you get to white, really start to pop out. You'll really start to see a lot of these little minute details really kind of come through, and that's what's also really fun about dry brushing. So just going to keep adding a little bit of white and then seeing how that reacts and drying it more or putting more on or hitting it on the model because it's perfect, right? I'm just adding a little more white and less of the previous color each time I go. And now I'm doing kind of the brightest highlights here now. Being really gentle, barely touching the model, really just allowing it to catch those really fun and interesting edges. A big thing with painting models that I say a lot is we don't paint detail, we paint the edge that is the detail, right? What I mean by that is we are a three-dimensional surface painter. That's all we're doing, is we're using all of these crags and nooks and crannies and whatnot, and we're using those to our advantage. And that's what's so great about dry brushing. How's your guys' coming? You having fun? Are you seeing kind of the result I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, it's coming along.
Nice. And a good trick is if you point the model directly at you, right? So like from the camera's point of view, if you're looking at it like that, that is the easiest way to see where you should be putting your highlights, right? Because that's exactly where the light's going to be hitting it. And then if you flip it on the underside, that is exactly where you'll put all of the shadows, which since this was zenithal spray, you can see that most of those are still really dark for me, which is good. That's what we want. So the brighter we go up, the less you want to do, and the more gentle you want to be, and be more meticulous. Really think about where we're putting it. One of the reasons we're starting the bark first is because it's a really nice, widespread, giant area of just a bunch of nooks and crannies, and so that really kind of helps to solidify the dry brush method, and you can see exactly how the dry brush is affecting your model. And then later on, when we do more meticulous dry brushing in the smaller areas, you'll have a little bit of practice from all this bark. So I'm happy with mine. It's ready to be washed, right? So another big tip is if your model was wet, I should have said this before, I apologize, but if your model is wet, do not dry brush it. You'll just wet your dry brush and you'll start pushing water around, and it's brutal. But, let's see if you guys can kind of see. I think maybe this light is a little too strong. That's why it doesn't want to. So can you kind of see like those lines popping up? Those grooves are a little darker, and now I have these nice, confident, warm brown tan lines. That was just from going across it, right? From like exactly like right here, right? Just going across it. That's kind of what you want to see throughout the model. I need to hit the back a little bit more, it looks like. How's everyone feeling? How's your model coming along?
Good.
Good.
Sweet.
Good. I think.
Alrighty, if everyone's ready and they're happy with, and again, this is the pre-wash highlight. So you really can't mess this stage up because we're just gonna wash it again, right? And so this is gonna tint everything darker and then you get another chance at highlighting. So if you over highlighted, it's totally fine. Like, if anything, it helps even give you another layer, right? Have you guys kind of started, oh, apologies. Have you guys kind of seen the thought process here with the layering, the building upon the contrast? Even though it's just brown, we can really push the dark to the light. And the more you can do that with every color on your model, expanding that contrast from pure black to pure white, like getting those as far as you can where it still looks good and makes sense with a nice gradient. That's how you get really cool stuff going on. So the next step, if you have Agrax Earthshade, that's what we're going to shade all this bark with. I'll show you how to do that with the Agrax Earthshade, and if you don't have it, that's totally fine. I'll show you how to do it with the paints that I originally posted, and I do apologize. So straight out of the bottle with shades and contrast, they're almost a little too strong. So I always recommend grabbing a little bit out with your brush and putting it on your wet palette, right? And then just kind of letting that go, and then adding a drop or two of water. You can only make a mistake generally painting, and you really can't make a mistake painting. You can always paint over. But most of the mistakes come from not having your paint thin enough and translucent enough that if you make a little oopsie poopsie, it's not going to be so pigmented that it remains, right? So with the sorry, what was that?
Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out which color to use.
If you have Army Painter, it's I think just brown wash or dark tone wash, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brown. We've got wash.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
dark wash, not black, and drop into the
yeah.
shadows.
Pretty much any dark brown wash will work just fine. I would not recommend using a black wash though.
Quick question, going back to the dry brush. Now that we're done with the dry brush season, we're no longer going to be using this dry brush. We have others that are dry. Do you clean your dry brush off
So
after?
We're not 100% done with this guy yet. What we're going to do is we're going to wash this, and then we will hit it with the pure white, and we'll be really gentle, and that'll be our final step and the final highlight. So make sure not to wash this just yet. But yeah, I mean, these are like, dude, this is like 45 cents off of Amazon. So I just beat the hell out of it with some water, and then I throw it in a jug, and I'll use and abuse them until they don't work, and then I toss them. The softer makeup brushes are just the best to dry brush with. I've bought all the expensive dry brushes, and they suck. But yeah, I'll just rinse it out with water. Nothing crazy.
Exactly. Is there any issue with like paint drying within them?
There, if you pick one up and it's like really stiff and gross, I wouldn't use it anymore. You can use airbrush cleaner or a couple of different what are they called? Pink soap or brush cleaner. I have another brush cleaner around here. You can clean them out and use them. I mean, I've had the same makeup brush for like 5 years, so I don't tend to have too many problems. I usually will just dunk them in water. I'll just scratch them out on a paper towel, dunk them in water until I don't see pigment anymore, and then they're usually pretty good. So.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. So I've taken my Agrax Earthshade out and I've put it into the wet palette. I've added just a touch of brown because I want to have a little more control. If you have a Citadel bottle, sometimes I'll grab a bunch of paint from the bottom and I'll squeegee it off the side of the dropper, and then I'll add water to the top side of the dropper. So you might see me do that as well. So A good amount of shade and a good amount of water. I would say 3 parts shade, 1 part water. And we're just going to go over all of that wood we just did. Right? Do you see how that just instantly went in to those recesses and it's really culminating. It's showing our mid-tone, our highlights already. And we're just going to coat it. We're just going to send it all over. This is the other fun part. So my favorite things to do is to dry brush and to shade. So yeah, this step's super easy. Just send it. And if you do not have a wash product, if you purchase the um, contrast, the gray contrast, grab a little bit of that, just a touch of it, put it on your wet palette, grab a little of the grunge brown, mix it together, right? And then add a bunch of water to it. And that literally is the exact same thing as a Grax Earth shade. I'll grab just a little bit more to make it a little darker. And that is how we get a wash without a wash. You can make washes out of any colors as well. So if it's a cool color, you add a little bit of black, the original color, and then a ton of water, right? And if you're working with a warm color, you use brown. So a really dark brown, or you can make a dark brown with just black and brown as well. So, and then you just add a ton of water, and that's the exact same thing. That's all any of these washes are.
Have you ever used like a specific shadow wash?
In terms of like
Oh, like
product
we've
wise,
got a wash that's literally called shadow wash.
I generally what I use is just Nuln Oil and Agrax Earthshade if I'm doing acrylics. Or I'll use my contrast paints often as a wash. I'll just water them down. So that's mainly what I use to wash.
Our shadow is basically a lighter version of oil.
Oh, is it? Oh, nice.
Yeah, we also have Nuln Oil.
Nuln Oil is aggressive. I hardly use it. I use that
Yeah.
mainly for I use it mainly for metallics. It's really good on metallics. Everything else, it's a little too aggressive.
Potash?
Was it just a dark brown?
It's a very dark black.
Oh.
And I agree. It brings things down too much for me to want to use it much. So usually water down further. Or just not use it.
So, and then a couple, this is kind of a more advanced technique, but as you're washing, if you get the pure wash and then just start pressing it in, right? I'm just touching it in underneath other points in the model that would have just a shelf of a, it's kind of the only way to describe it, because like underneath her chest here, this bark that comes out, it would have a natural shadow just underneath the bark below it. So I'll just go through the model and find those kind of shelves is what I would like to call it. And I'll just add a little extra wash.
Let me glue it back on. Which leaf?
On the headdress.
So yep, this is really where you'll see kind of all of the steps come together. This is the fun step, right? Because we've done the midtones, we've done the pre-wash highlights, and now you're just bringing that shadow tone back into it. So this is the really cool step that kind of brings the whole model back together. What do you guys think? Is it working out? You liking it?
Yep.
Well, something's happening.
Again, I'm kind of adding a little bit of water. I'm manipulating it. I'm doing a little test spot after I refill my brush, and then I get aggressive with it.
Okay, it's right there.
Yeah, I know it is.
Whoops, a little hair on there. A ton of the work on this model is the bark. So we're looking good on time. You guys are crushing it. I'm not trying to rush you though. Take your time. It's actually why more complex models are easier to paint. It's because just they have more edges, so you can really abuse dry brushing and washing more. When you're doing like a space marine and you have to be clean and careful, they actually take longer than say one of these characters. All right. Any questions, guys? Life's good.
Good.
Interesting doing the um elfic flesh
Mm-hmm.
wash, like, putting the shade over that one looks, I don't know. It looks very different than wash over all of the other colors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Looks,
if it's really bright, that's okay. Um,
yeah, it's not. I can't really tone it down as much as.
right. That might just be the difference between, say, the Agrax shade, just that subtle difference in color where it's not wanting to play nice. But what we can do to fix that is when you go back to highlight, since that elfic flesh is going to be on the tips, you can mix in a little hair of the grunge brown and honestly, maybe even a little bit of the barbarian skin, and then do primarily elfic flesh in your dry brush, and then just go over those edges, and it should kind of correct it a little bit more.
So for the bark, are we doing any like wet painting, or is dry brush kind of all we're doing for
This,
the bark?
so in the probably the intermediate class with this model, we will start going through and actually, like for instance, painting on like the highlights like this and really bringing out those extra spots where maybe the dry brush didn't do it justice,
Mm-hmm.
hand paint those in. So to hand paint all of the details on this would take a bit of time. Um, Definitely something you guys can, of course, do later on, but that will be in the next class of really focusing in on hand painting techniques, like what I'm doing right here, grabbing our mid-tone where it kind of washed out and adding it back in. And
Are we still on the dry? Sorry, on the shade step.
Everybody's
yeah, we're
working
just
on
on the
it.
shade. I'm just kind of messing around here. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, once the shade, we're gonna let this dry for quite a bit. I hope you guys are happy with that kind of result because the next result will be the final, or the next step will be the final highlights. Um, if you are unhappy with how yours came out, maybe there wasn't enough mid-tone, or maybe you did too much shade, you can just start the process back to dry brushing the mid-tone in and then building it back up to the elfic flesh. So this process that we just did, especially with dry brushing and if you're using an airbrush, you can do like 10, 15 times before you start getting pigment buildup where you're starting to lose detail. So if yours didn't turn out like mine did and you're a little unhappy with it, uh, just go back to the process. If you feel like, oh, now it just looks like dark brown with white lines everywhere, that means that your mid-tone was stripped out by the wash, and you would just dry brush the mid-tone back in and then be real gentle with your highlight. Does that?
But we've got to wait. Yeah, I stripped my mid-tone, but we need to wait for a while though, right?
Yeah,
For it
yeah.
to
You'll
tone.
have to. We're gonna start working on the next process, and we'll let the all this dry, and then we'll do our final highlight. And if it's not your final highlight, that's what I really like about, especially this that we just did together. This is my like process for 80% of my painting. Like I'll block it in, I'll dry brush it with my mid-tone highlights, I'll wash it, and then I'll highlight it. And if I don't like it, then I'll just do it again. And it's like a really nice way to never lose detail because the dry brush leaves very little amount of pigment behind. The wash leaves very little pigment behind as well. So you can keep going. You can keep trying. This is like the one way to paint where you never truly can be done. You can keep making it better if you want, or you can add. I've changed entire colors by using this method. Like I just went, you know what? I like that the shadow is good and mid tones are good. I just don't like it's this color, and so then I'll wash it with a contrast paint and completely change the color. So this is kind of the bread and butter for most of my painting.
So if you wash it and then have to put the midtones back, does that mean you have to wash it again after you
So if you put the midtones back in with the dry brush,
Mhm.
that wash will stay in the recesses. So you would just do a little more aggressive dry brushing, not your final highlight, real gentle. You'll be like, working it in. But the nice thing about dry brushing is it really never gets into those cracks and crannies. So your shadow should still be in that recess, right? So you can
Okay.
mid-tone the whole thing, your shadows will be fine, and then you can just go back and then do your highlights real nice and gentle like. Does that make sense?
Okay, so if we're just dry brushing for the shadows, or sorry, if we're just washing for the shadows, why wouldn't you put the wash after the base as opposed to the midtones?
Um, it's kind of you can definitely do that. There's nothing wrong if that perfectly fine. I like to do just a highlight right before I wash because then it'll give it just a little more gradient. So from my
Mm-hmm.
wash, mid-tone, and then really light highlights, and then that'll give a really nice tonal gradient. And then I'll finish with just dry brushing my final highlights. So it's just adding kind of a fourth tone to the color, right?
Right.
Because if you base then wash, your whole base is one color. It's just a shade darker, and then you have your wash in the recesses, and then you highlight. Then you just have the three. But you can also, this whole process you can do in whatever order you want, so long as you do the final highlights at the end step, right? So you can add highlights in midtone and then wash, or you can wash, mid-tone, highlight, final highlights, right? Or you can, the only true like concrete steps is at least getting your base color in first and then your final highlight in the end. But you can, slot the different steps in however you would like. Whatever. Oh, you know what? I made a mistake here. I need to wash again. Then you just wash, then you just highlight. Done. Right? So
Okay.
whatever is like effective at the time. Specifically, I just really like doing the wash right before my final highlights because it'll also show me if I messed up anywhere as well, and then I can kind of correct it with either more washing or more midtones or my final highlight. But you're totally 100% correct. It really doesn't matter the specific steps that you do, just so long as your highlights at the end and you base with your midtone at the beginning. So if everyone's ready, we're going to move to the next step. We're going to let the rest of this really dry and get really nice and ready for the final dry brush. Don't worry about your dry brush drying out. It's dry already. It's not gonna the paint won't like adhere for at least a couple more hours. So you're totally fine to set this aside. And we are going to do the skin real quick. So with the skin, you're going to take your Talisar blue, and straight from the bottle, this will be super, super powerful. So we are going to thin this quite a bit, right? We're going to make it almost a wash, not exactly a wash. So I'll say probably one part, two. We'll go 2 parts this blue, this contrast, and 1 part water. And we'll start with
Right.
that and see how that goes.
Okay.
Another tip here is find a spot on your model that no one's ever going to really see and just test it real quick. So for me, it's the back of the head, the back of the neck here. I'm just going to touch it, and I like that. So now we're going to send it on the front part. I might add just a hair more of water. Yeah, that's good. And we're going to do this whole section. Now with contrast paints, you got to let them do what they want to do. You can't really fight them too much. If they want to pool where they want to pool, you can dry your brush and grab it out, but it kind of defeats the purpose of the contrast paint. The nice thing about contrast paints is they are a wash and a base at the same time. So it's going to wash your model while also putting in your mid-tone at the same time. That's why I really like using them. And I call them contrast paints just because I really like the Citadel contrast paints. It's what I've used the most, but they're also known as just speed paints, or I think there's another word that they call them. But do not worry about it pooling up blue inside the bark on the sides here. If you aren't confident with getting into these kind of recesses with it, feel free to swap to the smaller brush so you can make sure to be accurate. I kind of think of this blue as it's like a ghostly figure, so it must radiate out a little bit of ethereal blueness. So I don't mind that it's going to hit the sides of my bark. If anything, it'll kind of reinforce that it's a spirit and not like a elf in a tree body. So, but again, it's your model. If you don't want blue on the bark, then don't put it there. Be real careful because it's kind of hard. I just send it. That was my excuse for being a little lazy, I guess. Just
So what do
try.
you do?
Huh?
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, 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 no. Go ahead.
Oh, just if I have brown on the lady's skin,
Mm-hmm.
then obviously the blue is not really doing too much for
It's
those areas.
yeah, it's not going to tint the way you want it to. If you ended up getting brown where that blue is going to be, just take a little bit of that elfic flesh and just paint over where that brown ended up. If it's really widespread, you might have to base coat the entire section in that elfic flesh just to give you a nice middle tone. I would try your best to kind of mix together black and white and match whatever it was around it. And if you can get it close enough, you won't be able to tell the difference when you hit it with the blue.
Okay, yeah, because I've already put blue on it, and then I guess it's probably too wet to want to put like a white base on.
Yeah. If you're there, don't even worry about it.
I can help you with it later.
You'll just have to kind of do maybe a patch. It's really hard to patch paint, contrast paint. Um, if it's like really like crazy in your face, you'll have to patch paint it. But we're also going to do some white highlights on a lot of this, so maybe it might have ended up in a good spot where it'll just end up being painted white over the blue. So with the contrast paints, you can do, while it's still wet, don't do this when it's like semi-wet, but if it's still wet, you can actually reinforce the shadows with a little more contrast paint before it's dry by pushing that pigment into those recesses. So like the center of her chest here, I'm really being careful to just drop it in to give it a little more shade. Contrast paint does best when it's done in like one clean go. But you can always fix it. You can always repaint it. Sometimes I've done it before in the past where you just had to repaint the whole section back to a base tone, a neutral white, and then try again. It happens. But everything is always fixable. just takes a little more time.
So when you say that the contrast paints are best in one go, you mean at like one coat at a time? Can you do a second coat of the speed paint without like rebasing it, or
You definitely can
you
do a
find that it's
second coat of
just
it. By
okay?
one go, whatever section you're painting with contrast paints, trying to do that whole section with one layer that's really nice and like semi thin, and then it darkens in the recesses naturally, is the best way to get good effects from speed paints. If you like, for instance, if I was to do, say, just her stomach um, in a different pass, or I try to add more to it while it's wet, it would get extra dark here, and then the upper portion would be like still translucent. So using speed paints as they're intended as to be like one coat, it it's important if you're using it as the base color. Um, you can definitely add more. I do a lot of contrast paints. Like all of these Death Guard is nothing but contrast paint. But to kind of explain what happens when you don't do the full surface, which this was the effect I was going for with this guy. But like, if you see that kind of brownish hue down below on his, see if I can get it to zoom in. Man, is my like
Yeah, on
lens dirty or
the
something?
bottom of the armor.
Yeah, it'll show a very hard line on that color,
Okay,
right? And that's just vindictive with how like they're really high concentrated. They're almost like alcohol paints with how like concentrated the color is. You can really thin them down and do another layer. That works really well. Um, like I said, I hardly ever use contrast paints at their base potency. I add a lot of water to them to really, if anything's a takeaway from this class, it's the more water you add, the more control you have when it comes to brush painting, because you can always do more layers. But it's when the pigment goes down on contrast paints, they're pretty hard set, and if you don't like how they went down, you'll have to repaint the whole section, or plan to do a lot of uh, brush painting highlights. So like for her chest here that I did on the test paint. Let's see, gosh, I cannot get anything to focus right now. I don't know why. You can kind of see I brush painted all these highlights in, just like hand painted them, and then I added blue and whatnot, and I just treated it as like contrast paint as a wash instead of as like the end result.
gotcha.
So if everyone's ready with their blue, we're gonna do the next contrast paint section, which will be the orange on the weapon, and we're gonna really, this is actually the one paint, at least with my paint, it's so old. I need to probably add some contrast medium to it, but I put this boy on thick, like real thick. So I'm gonna grab a nice glob of it. Now this is specifically just my experience with this paint alone. If you have a different speed paint or contrast paint that's orange, this kind of falls into the discussion when we were talking about whites and yellows not really wanting to go down well. That's true for even the speed paint. It doesn't. It's really thin, and it gets to be a weird yellow, and it's not really orange. So I put it on nice and thick, and I really just let this do what it wants to do. I try not to fight it. I let it bubble up in the center of the weapon, just naturally, and that way it'll tint the center of the weapon a nice orange and then yellow highlights on the edge automatically. And it's one of those very few instances where I really just go right out of the bottle and I just slather it on. Very contradictory to what everything I just said a moment ago, but it's just this paint specifically. I've found that I get a better finish with just not fighting it and just globbing it.
This is the Eden yellow.
Mm-hmm. Yep, correct. So I'm just kind of collecting it where I have a little too much, so it doesn't run down the model, which can happen. But yep, this one is the easiest one because we're literally not doing anything else with the weapon. So once that dries, that will be pretty much the final step for the weapon. In the intermediate and advanced classes, we'll really push that to give it like glow, and we'll do OSL on it and make it look all crazy and fun, and have a reddish orange yellow like lighting up the side of her crown and doing the tops of the fingers. And I'll show you how to either hand paint it or airbrush it. But for now, this is just kind of getting really cool effects with contrast paints with little work. And one of the reasons we're doing kind of a beginner, intermediate, and advanced class is one, so you don't have to buy a ton of models, right? Like one model for each class. That's one of the reasons, is trying to give you guys a little more replayability with each model. And the other reason is it's really hard to give you like a class that will take this model from gray and take it all the way up to a a professional diorama level piece, right? I can't do that in 3 hours. That's like that's crazy. you know so the other classes probably won't be as long as this one. We'll just do really quick, like this. We're going to do the OSL on there, and we'll brighten these up, but those classes will be super fun as well. I don't have them posted yet, but that's the idea so far, is if you feel like the difficulty of this class is not scratching that itch where it's getting you to the next stage, then the intermediate and advanced might be for you. But yeah, once that yellow set in, we will move on to our green. And the green, what's nice with the brown is this really lends itself well. So if you want, sorry, what was that?
Nothing. I'm just looking for one of my colors.
Oh, for sure.
Sorry, on the topic of the intermediate and advanced classes,
Yeah.
are you planning on picking up with this model after after we have finished today, or starting from a
Correct. Yeah, we'll do this model next time, in the
uh,
intermediate and advanced classes. That way, we can really push this model to its like very limits. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
This is what I would consider like tabletop ready. So like this level of painting that we're doing right now will look really good from the tabletop, and then the intermediate class will look like really really good close up, and then the advanced class will be like, holy shit, you painted that. Like that's what the goal is, for anyone who picks up that model, be like, oh my god, you did that. That's what I'm going to try. I'm still kind of organizing those classes and figuring out exactly how I want to do it. And I would like to do these classes on a monthly schedule as well. So trying to work out exactly, like maybe we release the model we're going to print or the paint. So Resin Reborn can get it out to you guys. Maybe do a 6-week lead time on that. And then at the beginning of the month, we'll do a beginner class with the new model, and then an intermediate class with the previous model, an advanced class with the previous model, and then release the next model. And then at the top of the next month, right? That's kind of tracking. Anyways, I'll figure it out. But I'm
Makes
trying to
sense.
get 3 classes out of each models if we can.
Because we could also do the same model like 3 times in 1 month, right?
Yeah, we could also do it that way as well. Yeah. So we're spitballing, we're figuring it out. It'll be cool. It'll be fun. So, but yeah, If everyone's ready and they got their orange on their model and their blue chest is done, we'll move on to doing our green vines or anything you want to be green.
I touched all of that paint and it came off.
That happens. I ripped off half the skin on the back of my giant with just my
Oh,
fingerprints. I ended up making it look like scar tissue, so it ended up looking cool. But I was like, "Damn it!" Like I was using gloves for the first time. Like this is why I don't use gloves. I'm actually gonna make my staff green this time instead of black. Um, I don't know because I want to. But you guys can take the green and make anything you want to be vines to be vines. I chose green specifically for just where her hands are. It looks like she's shooting out like a viney, um, freshly grown attack.
Clean water.
nice.
You're about to ask something? Well, what's up?
No, I have yellow and blue water, and it's swirling to make green.
Oh, there you
So-
go. You got a green wash. Bottle it and sell it. But yeah, that's the advantages of the two water basins right there. So originally I had you guys put that gray contrast paint in for specifically the staff, but I kind of regretted doing it black. I was thinking of like ironwood, and I was like, you know what, green would be more poppy. Um, if you want to turn it black, send it black. Now you have a nice. Don't worry, I use that contrast, that gray contrast paint a ton, so it'll come up in the next classes. It was not a waste. You can definitely use it. So I'm just gonna go through, tint what I want green. If the green isn't really like showing green, um, just let it dry and do another layer, or you can, when we go back to the next dry brushing stage for the final bark highlight, you can hit those vines with that white and that'll fix it right up too. It's a very calm green, very mild green.
Did you dilute the green at all?
Uh, this one I've pre-added a bunch of water to, not a ton of water. You can use it out of the bottle. It might be like a little like bubbly. If it's bubbling up on you, add a little bit of water to it. Um, if it's not really showing as green and it's more like a green tint, I would go ahead and use it straight from the bottle. Really, this green you can't put too much on. It's a really calm, very mild, medium green. And what we'll do is when we do the final highlights on this whole John here, we'll use a very clean, uh, by itself, white, the dry brush, but we'll use the Elfic Flush to basically dry brush the whole model white. If you want, this is kind of like if you want, and any area that you want to go back and add in more midtones, you can then go in with the exact same color you used, really watered it down, and that'll tint it to your highlight. Sorry, I feel like I'm not describing things well. So we'll get to that step, but to explain what I really like about contrast paints and specifically dry brushing is you only need these two colors and you can turn, this is your shadow, your midtone, and your bread and butter, right? You can use it as a shade as well. Then you just hit the highlight with this, and then you just thin the contrast back down, and you go over your warm white, and boom, you have an instant highlight color. So you don't have to buy like, oh, well, that's great. It's not the first time I've done that. So instead of having to buy, say, these four colors, right? Just doing the contrast paint, using the white highlight over it, and then thinning it in contrast paint again. Boom, instant highlight. And you guys will see what I'm talking about here soon.
Yeah, I've noticed the green contrast paint doesn't do too much.
It's
when you're
very,
painting
yeah,
it
it's very
brown.
mild. Very mild for sure. But that's also like its advantage as well. It's not like the blue contrast paint is like, I'm blue. Whatever you put on, whatever you use this with is now like cobalt strong blue. The same thing with the magenta Doomfire. That is a very powerful contrast. So, but this not the nice thing about this green one is you can really just layer it on. You can send it where you want, and if you want it to be brighter, you can just hit it with the Elfic Flesh with a dry brush, and then go over it with a really translucent wash with it. So I have just about everything I want green on. I'm not trying to rush you guys. Take your time. Pick what you want to be green. Make it so. I am going to begin moving on to painting my leaves white. Or sorry, not white. My magenta. All my little leaves and petals and whatnot.
I painted all of them green.
You can.
Oops.
It's up to you.
So
Are
and
you wanting them to be into?
I didn't realize that the leaves weren't supposed to be green. Was it just the staff that's supposed to be green?
I just did the staff green and the vines. You can make the leaves green too. You don't have to make them pink. That's definitely an option. And it would still be this would be an analogous paint scheme, right? Because you have your green, your yellow, and your blue. So that would work just fine. That would be, let's find, this guy's the analogous paint scheme, right? So that works just fine too. You do not have to make your leaves pink. If you want them pink, the green is super calm. The pink might overtake it.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, to get it like exactly what you want, you'll probably have to paint those leaves back to your Elfic Flesh.
Yep.
I'm unfortunately a very heavy-handed painter, anyways, so it's not like this model's looking great.
I'm sure it's looking awesome, and there's nothing wrong. I have these massive paws. I'm a big construction worker, and it has taken me years to not just, slam paint everywhere. So I'm going to take a little bit out of the jar here. I'll add a little bit of water to it. And if you don't have Doomfire Magenta, you can just use red contrast paint or any red paint you have and just water it down a little bit. And this will be our midtone and our wash at the same time. That's really what contrast paints are, is they're a wash and midtone in a jar. And it's why I like using them quite a bit.
So what color are you using for pink?
I would use. Where is it? This.
I unfortunately have to bounce an hour early, but thank you very much for putting this on.
Of course.
My guy's a bit of a mess right now, but like I'm actually very happy with a couple of pieces of it, and actually I felt like I actually learned like quite a bit. So
Sweet.
If I were to start over on the guy, like with the stuff that I feel like I learned throughout the thing, I feel like it would have been like all the parts would be the parts that I feel like I actually did well on, right?
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah, very happy,
awesome.
very
Thank you.
excited.
Well, thank you for letting me
And
know.
definitely gonna watch the last hour
For sure.
once you get it posted.
Well, thanks so much for coming and hanging out with us, and hopefully, um, the last hour isn't just a complete mess. Hopefully, I can tie this
Oh,
in a
no
nice
worries.
bow. So I'll catch you
No
later,
worries.
buddy.
Like I said, definitely learned a lot. So it was well worth the time, and appreciate you doing this.
Of course. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'll catch you later.
Yep, we'll chat later.
Paint's here too.
Hmm? Yeah.
Okay, I do actually have a thought.
Yeah,
Since, well, I don't know, my model doesn't look great either. If we wanted to do like 3 levels of class for each model,
sure.
we could offer like a model set discount. Like if people wanted to do like 3 models, we could do a discount for
Oh, each
3 models.
additional model? Yeah.
Yes, also you can paint it 3 times and then just
Right.
improve it each time.
Right. No, that's
And then
yeah. No, I like
yeah,
that idea. At least give people the option, you know.
if people are interested, because yeah, I think it'll look better the second go around.
Well, and that's also something that's super critical is your first model. And this isn't fair either because I also did a test paint. Now I'm showing you guys how to paint this, and I'm all over here doing like this bang up job, and I already had practice, you know, which isn't fair. Um, but no, I think that's a great idea. Give people more opportunity to make mistakes and if anything, get after it after learning all those concepts from the beginning to the end. It's kind of hard to see the whole without, you know, going from
Mhm.
beginning to end.
Well, I know Adam doesn't really agree with this, but I like seeing like the progress where it's like, okay, this was the first model I did, and then you
Oh
can
yeah,
actually
yeah,
see
yeah, yeah.
the time you advance. You're like,
Doing that.
wow, I've actually. Well, yeah, you just
Absolutely.
complain that you did as opposed to being like, wow, I've improved so much. You're just like, oh, I was a shit.
No,
Yeah.
I just want to repaint them.
Well,
Is it crazy to say that my first model I ever painted I sold?
wow.
Yeah, I know. It was not good and I shouldn't have sold it but a person wanted it, so I gave it to him.
Well,
Like, yeah, $10, I guess, dude. And I
well,
wish I
Adam
had never
actually
done that.
tried to give it away.
Which model? You don't even know what my first model
Wasn't
I
it the
painted
orc?
was.
It was the orc on a wolf, and you were like, "Oh, I hate it. Just
I
gonna
guess you
give it
do
away."
know. I do hate that one.
And then I wouldn't let you.
It looks
But
like shit.
Dude, I wish I had mine. It looks so bad, dude.
right?
It looked like I took a rattle can of spray paint to it. The poor bastard was so like textured and there's no detail remaining in it. So,
Yeah, I've got some Pokemon. I have um, what is it? The Alolan Vulpix. So he's just like pure white.
yeah.
And oh my god, trying to paint that like a thin coat of white
Oh,
was
it's the worst.
so. Oh god, it's so like pasty and it was horrible.
If I can, I always airbrush or rattle can white or yellow if it's going to be like a predominant color because it just takes so long to paint. That's just how the pigmentation is on those more gentle colors. AK, apparently AK is a really popular paint um, for white and yellow. I've also heard Pro Acryl makes a really good white and yellow. There's another brand called Too Thin Coats that swears all of their yellows and whites will be too thin coats. Bold claim, but
I've
yeah,
heard from a bunch of people who have used too thin coats that for the whites and yellows it's not quite two, but
close
it's
to it.
better than you imagine for
What?
whites and
Yeah,
yellows.
yeah. I'll have to check them out because I really like Vallejo Game Color. Those are actually been the best yellows and whites I've used, but I've heard that those they're even better than those. So
Okay.
I can attest to Pro Acryl. Their white. I've not used their yellow, but their white is the only white I'm currently using, and I have Vallejo as well. I like Vallejo a lot. I use the Vallejo white primer.
yeah,
I've used that for airbrushing quite a bit. But the Pro Acryl, I just think nothing compares.
yeah, I really
Okay.
gotta buy some. They're a little pricey, but they're a little you get a little more bang for your buck. That's a larger bottle than normal.
I also really like their bottles.
We got I'll have to look up the name of it. There's a brand of white primer that is like supposed to be really good. It's some of the stuff that the people use for like their Gundam kits.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
The only problem I have with it is you need a massive nozzle on the airbrush
Mm,
for it. I'll have
mm-hmm.
to try it again because I think it's like you need a minimum of like a 0.5. And I think what we have right now is a 4 and a 2.
Is it a Tamiya product? Because anything Tamiya makes, I've loved.
I don't
Or
believe
Tamiya,
so.
I think
I
makes it.
also really like Cameo stuff.
All right. So once you guys have completed all of your different contrast paints, so your blues, your greens, your pink leaves or green leaves or your orange staff or whatever else that you chose for your colors, let me know. Honestly, like I've missed a lot of spots on this, which I'll just have to go back in my free time to finish up, as I'm sure you guys will have to as well, just because it's, like I said, impossible to just paint everything perfectly the first go. But I hope you guys are pretty happy with what you got so far. We still have the perfect amount of time for finished details. So just gonna add a little more color here and there. Now I know we talked about maybe the complexity of this model being what's it called? It would make someone nervous to try. Do you feel that way, Dan? Did you, when you saw this model, where you're like, "Oof, I don't know about that. That's a lot." Is that
Um, I honestly didn't think about it. I really liked the model, and I saw you paint it on stream a couple times. So
yeah?
I wasn't really thinking about the difficulty. I just kind of I knew I liked it. I actually uh did exactly what. I'm sorry, I didn't catch the other people's names. But the others mentioned that you can pick up multiple.
Uh-huh.
I picked up three. I wanted to first paint one on stream and then have one or two to kind of practice on and paint and kind
Yeah.
of you, maybe slow down and again to also see that improvement.
Sure.
So yeah, I was really excited about the mini.
Sweet. Because we didn't want to scare people off, because it does look like a very imposing model, but its complexity is what makes it easy to paint. At least that's what I feel like. I hope you guys might feel that way too now that we've gotten to this stage.
I like it because I don't think it's difficult to paint and get to look get to a point where it looks good. Like I'm
Yeah.
already really happy with how this looks. But I also look at it and I can see a lot of different ways that you can push this
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
constantly improve it and make it better and better and better.
So I don't want to rush you guys. But
Mhm.
the next step is going to be we're gonna take our brown brush that we used and we're gonna grab some of that white, and mix with just a little bit of the barbarian flesh, not a ton. And this is going to be our final highlights for the wood. So we're just going to go over the wood and really bring out everything that might have been lost from that wash we did earlier. So the sequencing of this, I kind of do this to save time, but I will start with the biggest area and then do as much as I can, of course, ending with a wash and then letting that dry while I work on the rest of the area. So we'll return to the wood here to do its final highlight. And if you're not happy with how it's looking, you can of course repeat the process. It's easy to repeat the process if you haven't painted the rest of the model. but it's still something you can definitely do, no problem. With the final highlights, just be real gentle. Make sure your dry brush is really dry and the paint isn't coming off aggressively and you're in control. But if too much comes off, you can always wash it again. All right, I'm pretty happy with how that wood is looking. And so I'm going to stop messing with it before I ruin it. That's also a big thing. Know when to throw the towel in. Sometimes I've messed with a model until I was like, oh, if I just do this one little thing, and then I'll do this one little thing, and I keep, messing around with something, and sometimes I end up with a worse product, and I'm like, I should have quit like 20 minutes ago. So, and then once you have those final highlights on the bark done, you're just going to move to your next dry brush, right? We're going to set this aside. This is the time when you can clean it. So I get it real wet, and then I just take that same paper towel I've been using, and I really just beat the hell out of it. You'll never really get all of the paint out, but what's important is that you really agitate those particles off of the bristles, especially at the tip, because the only thing we really care about is the tip of the airbrush or the dry brush. Really just agitate those particles, be aggressive, and boom, perfectly clean. So grab the next dry brush. This dry brush, I have specifically a really small one. So if you have a smaller dry brush, grab that one. And this one, we are going to specifically use just the pure white. And we're going to use it just on the blue. So I'm going to be really gentle. And with this one, you're really just going to drag straight down. Try and hit the top of the chest here. Be really careful. Get the collarbone. Be real mindful of where those bristles are at. Now in the intermediate class, I can show you guys how to really hand paint this skin to something very impressive. But for now, we're just getting the lighting in place here. Get a little bit on the top of the shoulders. It might seem like really aggressive, and the in between color, right, from the white to the stark blue, but that's okay because what we're going to do is really thin down our blue contrast paint really thin and treat it like a wash, and that'll tint all that white to a nice really middle tone highlight kind of blue. I can do a little more elfic flesh on my palette.
When you say pure white, is that you mean elfic flesh?
I mean elfic flesh, yeah. I very, very rarely use pure white, so but yeah, this nice warm white. This is about the brightest white I'll use for most of the time. Very specific spots I'll use pure white, mainly for like eyes, like for glares or kind of different. Just pure white is so rare to see in nature. Just about snow is about the only pure white you ever see. And staring directly at the sun is the other time.
So do you have like suggestions if I'm very prone to like I
Overpaint?
have like blue. Well, I have like blue all over various wood parts, and like the horns have blue on random areas just because I'm
Uh-huh.
horrible at
With
painting.
if you do that and you catch it quick enough and it's a contrast paint, you can get your brush super wet
Yep.
and dab it on the area where you accidentally drop the contrast,
And you
and the
just
brush
wipe
will
it.
soak the contrast and you can peel it off.
Yeah, you can
Well, I
wipe it
mean,
right off. If it's already
a bit.
happened and it's dry, um, it's easier to paint the surfaces that weren't contrast paint. So if it's like on that bark, you would just go grab your dark brown and repaint that in, and then put a little shade in there, and if you need to, then highlight it again. But
Oh, you wouldn't paint it blue, or you wouldn't paint white over the blue. I guess that would make sense.
I
Just
you can.
brown.
It depends on the color that's what you're touching with the other color, specifically the bark. The blue being an undertone isn't that big of a problem, and you can just hit it with a really opaque, like base paint of brown on the top of it, and then hit it with a shade, and that'll clean it right up.
Okay.
Like right here, I got blue on the bottom of this antler, so I'll just grab a little bit of my base coat, my base tone, that grunge brown, and I'll just hit it, boom, 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 and I might take a layer or two. And since this is my mid-tone, it won't look weird just covering it up right there with it, right? Boom, gone.
Okay.
Right, and then if I really, the pain in the ass part comes when you have to repaint your highlight. Like if that blue hit a highlight spot, that's when it gets
Mm.
annoying because then you have to hand paint that highlight back in. So I personally am really happy with how this highlight went down with her chest, just with the elfic flesh on the blue. If you aren't a fan of how yours is looking and maybe the white is a little too strong, you can take a little bit of the blue, right? Really, just a small amount. You can see my wet palette there. I'm gonna actually get rid of the rest of it on that brush, wash my brush completely, and then I'll add a ton of water to that, test it one more time, and I'll just go over it. And that, do you see how that just tints all of that white just back down to almost a baby blue? So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about just having a white and a contrast paint, and you can get your highlights out of it, right? And if anything, I will add just a little bit of pure blue here, and I'll reinforce some of the shadows there that got washed out from the dry brush. So if like what I've mainly was trying to teach with this class is um, taking different colors, different sections of what you're painting, and not looking at it as like one color or one technique, but instead trying to find different ways to stretch the contrast of those colors. So, taking our dark brown, for instance, in the recesses of the bark and taking it all the way up to elfic flesh, but it still looks cool, right? It still makes sense. Um, it's the same exact thing with every color, is trying to really expand that color range from the darkest dark to the brightest brights. And right now I'm just doing a little spot washing with the contrast to really give her some depth in her chest there. Not to be gross about it, but make sure she's looking good. There we go. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. So, if you guys are ready for the next step and you have the bark final highlighted and you have the blue skin final highlighted, we're going to move to the pink final highlights of the leaves. So you can use that last brush if you only use the elfic flesh on it, the dry brush you used, or you can grab a new one. I'm going to take a little bit of the elfic flesh, I'm going to take a little of that magenta contrast paint, and I'm going to mix it together, right? So now I'm making a really nice pastel pink, and then I'm going to dry the hell out of it, right? So what I'm doing right now is I'm just going to do a pre-final highlight, just give it a nice mid-tone so it's not just pure white going on to that pink, that bright magenta pink. This just gives us more room to be able to go from that really dark, rich pink all the way up to its final highlight, which will be the elfic flesh as well. And leaves, scales, and bark and bone are my absolute favorite texture to dry brush, because all those little crannies, those little nooks and edges, they just grab the paint so well that you can get really cool effects with it. So still just using that pastel pink. I'm trying to make sure I don't overlay the real deep recessed pink, but just highlight it. And then I will grab a little more of the elfic flesh, and this is when you do the really gentle final highlight, right? So I'm going to really get this nice and dry, and I'm going to final highlight these leaves just here and there. Just make them real nice and bright where the light's going to be hitting them.
What did you do for the mid-tone highlight for the leaves?
So I just took a little of the elfic flesh and that magenta doomfire, and I mixed it into like a really nice pastel pink.
Got it. So I've never mixed a contrast with like a layer paint before.
Oh yeah, it works just like any other paint. It's just pretty cool, pretty nice. You don't need much, by the way. That Doomfire Magenta, it goes far. So you can use like a pin drop and then grab, you know, a little bit of the elfic flesh on your dry brush and just mix it together. And you get a really nice pastel pink.
Okay.
Nope.
So, and then
No, I don't. Just
you
I already
can,
have some paint.
what was that?
Oh, I'm just talking to Ray. She asked me if I was doing pink, and I told her I was doing green leaves because I already have some of the other models from this line painted.
Sure, yeah.
So match.
So if you're going to do green leaves, I'll show you how to get a highlight on that green without having to actually buy a yellow. So I'm going to grab a smaller dry brush. This one will work. So we're going to take the elfic flesh, right? And we'll take a touch of that green, and we'll do the same exact process that we did with the pink, which we'll grab just a little divot out, just a little bit. Since this green really isn't that powerful, it's just going to give us kind of a nice warmish pukey green. And then we'll just dry that off completely. Should go on nice. There we go. So then we'll just go over all the parts that you have green, just like we did with the leaves of the pink leaves, which for you will be the leaves. And I'll hit everything that I've done green as well. Make a little bit more. Boom, 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 boom. And if is coming off like almost too white, that's totally fine. If anything, that's good. That's a good sign because we'll go back over it with that really calm green. And honestly, I might put a little bit of that yellow contrast we have, the iodine. Iodine. I don't know. I've never read this bottle to be honest with you. Iodine yellow. And that'll make this green pop even more instead of having it be a neutral. I wanted this green to be kind of a neutral tone because I didn't want it to take away from the boldness from the pink and the boldness from the blue. But in your case, since you're doing an analogous scheme, you want it to be really nice and bright and poppy. So once I have that, I'll grab just a hair of this yellow contrast paint. Put this on here. And I'll go over that green with it. Oops, need to water it down just a hair more. And those little white spots that I just hit with my dry brush on all those green parts, those are going to pop up as really nice strong yellow with this contrast paint, which in turn will go to green because it has that green background. And that's how you get a really nice, easy highlight. So I really like contrast paints. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but the flexibility of contrast paints where you just need white and a shade and you can turn any of these contrast paints into like a really effective tool of getting multiple colors. And I use them quite a lot to tone different parts of my models. So like if I have something that I want it to read like a little more yellow or a little more green or a little more blue or orange and it's close but it's not, I'll just hit up a little bit of contrast paint and thin it down a lot just to make a nice translucent kind of glaze, and I'll just glaze over those areas with that contrast paint, and I'll just tint it just so subtly to that other color that I was going for. So, and that is my model. I think I like having the green staff over the black staff. I think that was a better choice.
Yeah.
I was just thinking ironwood and like weapon, sounds cool.
Mhm.
So again, this is a really nice model that is what I would call tabletop ready. It's not perfect. It looks good. It looks great, but it's also at a really nice blank canvas to the next steps where we're gonna take it to a whole nother level. Those classes, of course, won't be as long as this one, just because there was a lot of bulk work we had to do. So we have about a half hour left. I am at your guys' disposal with whatever you need. If you need to look at my model, just let me know. If you want to share your model, if you want to critique on your model or a certain area, or if you want me to go over another, I'll leave this out until the end. If you want me to go over another technique, just let me know. I'm at your disposal.
For the first model that you did, it looked like you used a darker brown, maybe?
I washed it an extra time. So I washed it
Okay.
a little bit. I put 2 or 3 more washes in, and then I brought it back up. I could sit here and wash this one probably 1 or 2 more times with like targeted washes. I wasn't actually a
Mhm.
huge fan with how dark this one ended up being.
Yeah, I mean, it goes with staff, but I
Yeah.
like the lighter one.
So um uh, in the advanced, I'll go through like targeting shades where like you get it exactly where you want it to be and why. We'll go over um, light sources, light strength, how light interacts with different colors. And so on this one, I went a little heavy-handed with the shade. Um, It looks good. It looks cool. It just looks a little it looks ominous, doesn't it, compared to this one?
Yeah, like an evil wood.
Yeah, exactly. And definitely a vibe. Definitely a vibe, but you can see just how shifting just the tone of one of these colors, two of these colors, bringing it down in gradient has changed the entire vibe of it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Just actually pretty cool. Sometimes I have a bad habit of making my models a little too dark. I'm trying to work on that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, that looks like it needs a little more shadow, and then by the time I get done, I'm like, oh, it just looks like it's night out. How's it coming over there, Dan?
It's coming. It's funny. It was perfect timing because I was going back and fixing some shadows as you said that.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Um, yeah, doing little targeted washes. It's probably I spend more time on that than actually washing the model. It's really easy to just put a little drop in a crevice with acrylic paint. With oil washes, you just slather the whole thing and then you just clean for forever. But it looks so good. You don't have to do targeted washes when you do oil washes. They're just done. Whole thing's done.
So if you do an oil wash, do you generally paint that entire model in oil paint, or is it acrylic and oil mix?
So the I'll only ever do like a layer of acrylic or a layer of oil, just because
Mm-hmm.
how they function. Oil paints are in a oil solution, so the pigment is like ground up, and then they add like a linseed oil or a mineral oil of some kind, and so that suspended oil is what makes oil paints oil paints, and then acrylic paint is in a water-based solution, generally in a acrylic medium is just what it's called. I have no idea what that means. It could be like fairy dust water for all I know, but it's a water-based solution. So acrylic paints, you can add water, remove water. They dry faster and they react completely differently than oil paints. So you can paint oil paints on top of acrylic. You can paint acrylic on top of oil paints. But the biggest difference is oil paints before they're fully dry, it takes about 14 hours before you can like paint another layer. So when I do an oil wash, I'll basically bathe the model, the entire model in a really wash like viscosity, a ton of oil, little bit of paint, and just slather it all across it, just like you would with like an acrylic wash. And then I wait about 14 hours or so, maybe 10 hours,
Thank you.
and then you can clean all that off. That's the really cool thing. So you can manipulate oil paints until they're fully dry, which means you can completely remove a layer of them.
But you don't paint an entire model in acrylic or in oil, rather.
I haven't yet. I've thought about doing it. I generally only paint all my detail and layer and stuff in acrylic, but I have thought about doing a full oil painted model. It's getting really popular lately. People are using oil paints a
Okay.
lot more.
Yeah, because I've seen it, and I think it'd be interesting to do with like a bust.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Um,
yeah.
a bust. So if that's something that you ever have any interest in,
I definitely try
I'd
it
be down
out.
with that.
I definitely
You've
try
got,
it out. That you can get the most intense blends out of oil paints just because they
I
since
know.
since they take so long to dry, you can really manipulate and feather the paints together and create really nice gradients because I mean you have hours to work with it. It's not like acrylic where it's dry in 10 seconds.
Yeah, the shading and the mixing is pretty great.
It's also why I can't stand painting oil paints in art class. Oh, I hated it. I'm like, can this dry so I can put another layer on? Because I can't do this anymore.
Oh. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely easy to overwork the oil painting.
Yeah, my grandma
Like
was
grading.
fantastic at it, but ugh.
Was she?
Oh yeah. I mean, some of her paintings are. I mean, put Bob Ross to shame. Man, I'm also. I don't know if you guys know this. I am really sick right now. Like I literally crawled out of bed, took a shower, and then turned on my laptop to
Oh
do
no.
this, and I'm going back to bed right after. So, I've tried my best with what brain function I've had today.
You're doing good.
Thank you. I'm just trying
It's
not to
very appreciated.
shiver. What's that?
It's very appreciated.
Yeah. Well, and I get sick like once a year, and of course it's the only time that I've set aside for this.
Right. Well, you gotta go back and watch it, and if you think it's horrible, we can always be your guinea pigs again.
Fair enough. Um, but yeah, do you guys have any questions? Do you guys want to show off what you got going on?
In just a moment, I will. I'm just wrapping up a couple small details.
Sweet. And then I did talk about doing like a little contest at the end. I will definitely figure that out soon. It might be like a little itty prize because I'm really poor right now, but there will be something, and I'll figure that out. But yeah,
We could do something like for the next class.
Yeah.
You get like, I don't know, if you buy a set of models, you get like one free or something.
Sure. Yeah.
Or like, yeah, free admission for the next class.
Oh yeah,
or whatever.
I think that's a good idea. I like that. Well, the problem is if we all vote for the guy with the best model, it's kind of unfair to be like, you get the next class free, and the other guy with the worst model is like, I actually need that though. Like I need the like giving him the free class.
We can have like multiple winners. We can be like, who's the best, and then they have to pay double for the next class.
Yeah.
You can pay for the most improved or whatever.
Yeah,
The worst.
Yeah. Ooh, that would be a fun end of year competition. Most improved. That'd be really
Just
cool.
kind of.
Ooh, yeah. Let me see. Oh, that's looking awesome, man.
I don't know how well my camera picks it up, but
Nice.
Yeah, that's looking good.
I went with the.
Sorry, what's the thing you're holding it with? The blue thing? Oh.
Oh, you're muted.
muted.
Ooh, that's a cool holder.
So yeah, it's a little hobby holder. It's very similar to the Citadel one. It uses blue tack, like I was describing earlier. So I have the model on top of blue tack. The reason I like this a lot is because my hands are not very stable. So having this to be able to rest my pinky on as I paint,
that's awesome.
has made it really, really easy to not have to worry about my shaky hand, and it gives me a much easier hand to work on details.
Well, that's awesome. I'll have to buy that because that's I almost always have my pinky like resting here, or like on top of the model or somewhere, you know.
I have another one that I highly recommend if you have a 3D printer or if you have access to a friend with a 3D printer. It's this. It's very similar. But it was like a 2-hour print, and it is screw on. So instead of tacking things on, it'll screw onto most modern bases, and the handle also swivels. It's a little clunkier, but it's really comfortable, and for a 3D print, like it's one of my favorite 3D prints.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, well,
can you post that file?
Yeah, I can post it in the Discord.
Just a
Oh,
link
that'd be
to it.
sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
Yeah,
would be
we'll
that,
print you one, Patty. See
no, that's a
how.
perfect prize right there. Boom. Yeah,
And
no,
you
I'd
get the
like to.
prize for falling out of bed.
Yeah, I would like to check that out too, because there's plenty of times where I'm sitting here. I don't know if maybe the swivel thing just for streaming. I don't know if that I would like to use it, but I'm trying to think of because I also rotate. It rotates with it. Yeah, I'll have to check it out. Very cool.
It's going to typically be where your right hand rests, so
Okay, yeah,
it intrude or obstruct the model from like a camera angle.
sure.
You can see it as it won't interfere.
Yeah, you'll have to check
Sweet.
that out. Yeah, if this thing is 8 years old, this holder, I've had it for so long. I feel like it was just the other day I painted my first model. Um, so yeah, if you guys have any more questions, let them rip. If not, I think we might end the painting class. We finished up a little earlier, which I did not expect. I really didn't expect that. Of course, if you want to continue painting your model, of course, continue painting it. And when you're comfortable and you want to post it in the Discord, I'd love to see them. If you have any notes for me, feel free to also um, post it in there, whatever I can do better on the next one, or if you're excited about a particular thing that we did and want to see more of, or if you just want to chit chat, um, I'd love to see that too, and I really appreciate it. So
Hey,
again,
somebody mentioned brush cleanup. Do you want to
oh
go
yeah,
over that?
yeah, I forgot. Let's do that.
Wait,
real
before we
quick.
clean everything up, can I ask a question quickly?
Of course.
Shotgun. Okay, so let me turn this on. I had to step away for a bit to but so I still have some catch up work to do.
Uh huh.
Let's see, turn on camera. Okay, so I mean this it's all on shadow, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I can see it though. That's looking really good though. That looks awesome.
Well, so if you look specifically at, oh wait, can you see the pink or the yellow staff,
Yeah.
or not
Yep.
so
Yep. Yep.
well?
Yep. I can see it.
So then if I just turn it around, it's like green.
Greenish. Okay. So what's happened there is that's from the zenithal spray, and it's specifically because it's the
Yeah.
yellow contrast. Um,
Yeah.
what you can do is just you have to do more layers of contrast paint.
Okay.
So, yep,
Okay. Yeah.
just keep sending it. That's why I do that like really thick globule. If you see mine, I still even have that on mine. I would have to go back through, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Mhm.
It's just
Okay.
it being yellow. Yellow sucks. That's can't get away from it, even with contrast paint, unfortunately. So, but yeah, it's a good question. Your model's looking fantastic.
Oh, well, thanks. It's still needs some. Well, yeah. Adams is much better.
Let's see, Adams.
He did. Yeah.
Oh
Man, it is
yeah,
hard to get a good.
I know it's not easy, is it? It's a pain.
I don't know.
Yeah, dude, the lighting and camera angles are so hard. Now it looks great.
Yeah.
For the yellow, I actually took something that you said, Patty, and I
Yeah,
went back and I gave up the zenithal on the weapon top,
sure. Yep,
and I back and painted it with the elfish, and
yep,
then
yep.
reapplied the yellow contrast to the elfic skin.
Uh-huh.
Um, got a much more vivid yellow from
Yep,
that, and I
yep.
was really, really happy with that result.
Yeah, sometimes almost always if it's going to be yellow or white, I'll just go back before the after the zenithal and paint it white. But I learned that from my Tau. So let me grab something up here. Let's just grab this. So with my Tau, all of these orange and yellow, that's all that contrast paint. So that's where I learned what a pain in the ass that contrast paint was. And
Mm-hmm.
if you can tell, like this like really thin stretch here, where it's still showing as yellow, I sat there for hours with that flesh, and this was also prime black. So I sat here and suffered, just putting yellow, 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 dry yellow, dry yellow. It was terrible. That's why I only have like maybe 10% of that bottle left. But yeah, I always start from white for yellow. It sucks.
Yeah, I found that like dry brushing white and then doing like a yellow works better than just like painting it white too
Yeah.
as an undercoat.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to find. I have this very specific guy. All my stuff is. Oh, there it is. Fell on the floor. That's why. Okay, so a couple brush cleaning products. I really like this one. This one's kind of everyone's go-to. It's the Masters Brush Cleaner and Preserver. I'm sure it's like from a company that's like 8,000 years old. And then this one's also really good is pink soap from Speedball. Um, this one I use when I'm doing kind of a bulk clean. So when I need to clean like all of my brushes and they just got to a point where of no return, that works really well. Sometimes I'll grab an airbrush if it's like if paint has gotten up past the wick and it's hardened, which kind of ruins the cone shape. I'll take airbrush cleaner and put it in a shot glass, and I'll just put like, 5 or 6 brushes in the shot glass for about an hour or two, maybe shake them a little bit. That's how I bulk clean when a bunch of brushes have gotten out of hand and I was being lazy. This is how I clean them after almost every use. I try to at the end of each day, but I'll get nice, fresh, clean water and I'll place it in here. And what's nice about this, apologies, I've fought back coughs and sneezes this whole time. Um, the nice thing about this is you can work the brush in, never downstroke in it, like never, push the bristles into it, always pull back or swirl, right? Because we don't want to, you never ever want to press in hard on a brush. That's what breaks the brush the fastest. You always kind of want to work it like this. So with this specific product, I'll get a bunch of water, I'll clean that off, I'll grab a little bit more water, and I'll wait until it becomes kind of a paste, right? And it'll build up and it'll work the paint out. Right there, do you see how that's kind of becoming a texture? When it's at that stage, I will then wipe most of it off, right? Most of it off, and I'll leave it on and I'll cup my hand like so, and I'll put that right in the recess of my fat there. Is the only way to really describe it. And I'll twirl the brush. I'll grab a little bit more here. And what this does is it works as kind of a brush wax. So when you leave your brush to dry, it'll give you a really nice sharp point at the end. And so I'll let that one's done. I didn't end up using this brush, but I would do the same process. So that's how I maintain my real sharp points on my brushes. Um, 2 different kinds of brushes here. This is a polyester, and then that one that I just cleaned. Here it is. Oh, this one's also a. Let's see. That's a fake brush too. But yeah. Oh, okay, here. This is real hair. So the biggest difference between real hair and say like I'm trying to find an old brush. Where it's happened. I think I might have thrown them all away. Oh, here we go. This is one that happened too. So what you'll find with the non-real brushes, I can't remember what they're called, just like the polyurethane, strandy ones, is it'll break.
Synthetic. Sorry, Adam's yelling synthetic.
Oh, synthetic. Thank you. Like I said, I'm like half brain dead right now. So I don't know if you can see this, but what happens is the very tip of the brush actually breaks on synthetic brushes, where the individual strands actually like fracture right at the end. And that's not a bad thing. I have a couple of them lying around because they're really good at doing eyes because they're like almost like a little like tear shaped brush like shovel now. Like you can tap them in, so they have a use. But you'll find that no matter how well you treat and clean synthetic brushes, um, they will break at the end, and that's just why. It's just they're cheap, which isn't a bad thing. I probably have like 1,000 of these brushes. I buy them wholesale on Amazon, and when they break, I just throw them away. No big deal. So, but the real hair. This is Kolinsky sable. I'm still kind of getting used to it because I actually have only ever really used synthetic brushes. I really like this for detail painting and like painting in layers and whatnot. I don't think it's that great for contrasts and washes. For some reason, I feel like maybe it doesn't hold enough actual pigment and paint. Whereas this one, these synthetic brushes like really soak up a lot of material. And so then you can really lay out a lot of contrast paint and a lot of wash and be able to keep a lot of the same viscosity of it. Um, so those are the two different brushes. But yeah, that's how I try and maintain my tips as long as I can. Is this guy. This is the best. But yep, bulk washes, airbrush cleaner is good in a shot glass. This pink soap is good in a shot glass, or and just working it in and working it out. If you have paint that's dried above the quick, the kind of the where it meets the
Barely.
metal, yeah, that
Yep.
that the brush is pretty much useless. You gotta toss it.
Just throw it down the way.
But yeah, um, any other questions? I think that might be. I think that was the last one that they mentioned, right? Was brush cleaning and how to hold a model.
Do you have suggestions for how to get to hard to reach places like the back of the neck, for example?
So with this model specifically, I would have done this if you could build it in pieces, I would have left her back off, like, or keep her head off, like if you could, right? Um, really, there's no good way to do it. Just kind of have to suffer. A smaller brush helps. Um, it helps to an extent. I really didn't even paint behind her cowl that well. I could have spent more time. Um, if if you want a perfectly painted model, you just kind of have to put the paint in where it needs to be and then slowly repaint going out, right? Um, in the past, I've actually cut pieces like this off the model um, and painted it and then just glued that piece back on. That'd probably be the easiest way to do this. Uh, but yeah, uh, suffering, honestly, is just trying your best not to get paint everywhere. The other thing is generally if it's hard to get to, it's hard to see. So you could also just slather a ton of shade in there and call it a day.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I do that trick a lot. That's the one I don't tell people. Like, oh yeah, I definitely paint those hard to see and hard to reach places. Nah, sometimes I just slather it with shadow. So, but alrighty. Well, thanks so much, guys, for hanging out with me.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I wanted
Thank
to
you.
ask Dan quickly before we head out. Is
Yeah.
there any type of models that you would be interested in painting?
Oh, like out of the different
That's
uh
a war game.
stuff you sent. Honestly, like
Like, are you a war gamer, or is he a war gamer of a D&D, or like we're just trying to figure out what
kind of models people would be interested in painting.
Oh yeah, Dan, what are you
Me?
into? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I kind of both. I'm a DM for a family game. I'm just getting into wargaming more so for the painting side than for to be able to play. I'm working on a Stormcast Eternals army right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I just like to paint. I'm very average at best, but I really enjoy it. So I'm getting more into it. I think the only thing that I'm not the biggest fan of is sci-fi. Not that I have anything against it. It's just I gravitate toward fantasy.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so is there any specific kind of type of model you'd like to paint? You know, like wargaming stuff, or humans, or monsters, or factions, or anything, or animals, or busts.
I've kind of picked the models that I wanted to paint very vibe specific. So I will scroll and look for things that I like the look of, or I think would be fun to paint,
Okay.
or would be a challenge to paint. Like I recently picked up like Celestin Prime from Stormcast Eternals, and just because I really like the look of the model, but thematically, I don't think there's anything I'm actively searching for. But if I see it and it interests me, um, yeah. Another thing is I don't think I've found like too many models I really wouldn't want to paint, or I think I wouldn't enjoy.
Mhm.
For
Well,
sure.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking about that more.
Yeah, the way I pick what I want to paint is I look at the textures. That's where I'm at now. I'm like, ooh, yeah, wood. Wood's a good texture. I'll paint some wood. Yeah. Or like reptile skin. I'm like, oh yeah, scales. Oh yeah, I'll dry brush some scales. You know. Yeah, I don't
I'll
know.
have to send you the Medusa with her.
Oh,
You've got horrible head to paint.
is that the bust? The
Possible
Medusa
fucking.
bust?
It's impossible to clean. Well, there's a bust, and then there's the full scale or the full model.
Yeah.
But and like her head comes separately. Like it takes me like an hour just to clean the supports off out of her
Oh,
head. It's
brutal.
It's impossible to get into all the crevices where the snakes are. It's
painful.
annoying.
Yeah, it's
You
one
just
of
gotta
those.
you gotta airbrush it or something. Dip it in paint.
Yeah, that's one of those models that you would want to basically do all the shadow one color and then just paint wherever the light would be hitting, which is basically the top of the model. Like, have you seen that technique? Makes really cool models. It's almost like they're coming out of the shadow. So,
That's cool.
Yeah, do the shadow color.
That is cool.
well, right on, guys. I know it was kind of a small class, just kind of a little test run, but I sure do appreciate you guys coming out and hanging out and supporting me and letting me goof around, try my best to be a teacher. I definitely have some notes after this that my own mental notes on clarifying a couple things and making sure I'm being a little more diligent. I'm also like sick brain, so
Yeah.
I try my best, but I know I misspoke a couple times. So, but yeah,
Well, I
thank you so
appreciate
much.
I appreciate you letting me convince you and Adam to do a small test class instead of a big one.
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah, no, that was doing like I'm like yeah, I'll get 40 people in here. No, 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 that would be a
No,
nightmarish. That'd be crazy for the first
worked out
one.
well because you're sick.
Yeah, yeah. So. Well, anyways, guys, thanks again for coming and hanging out. And post your models when you're done on the Discord. I'd love to see them. And when you do post it, ask for critique if you want, or if you just want to be like, I did this, just tell me it's cool. I'll definitely do that too. So I'm at your
Sounds good.
disposal. Yeah, I'm not sitting here. I don't want to like bash someone's models. Like, I thought it was really good, you know? Like,
Don't add
just,
Adam for that.
yeah, just say critique, please, or just go, I did this. So. Um, look out for some updates. Again, I'm kind of swamped with work right now. I should be done with my job here in 2 to 3 weeks from now, hopefully 2 weeks, and that'll open up a lot more time for more streaming and give you guys more attention that you deserve. So I apologize for my continued kind of absence, but
Okay, we're super busy too. I mean,
yeah.
and we just got over I was sick for the last 3 weeks. Like it's
Oh, it's
going
brutal.
around
Yeah, it's brutal.
a lot.
Whatever poison everyone's having right now, I need to find whatever plague rat gave this to me so I can have some
Exactly.
choice words.
Patient zero.
Yeah. So, Well,
Feel
anyways,
better soon.
Feel
we'll
better.
do.
Thank you so much. It was really a lot of fun, and I plan on coming to the next class.
Awesome.
Next
Thank you.
few you hosted.
Yeah.
Sweet. That's what that was the goal. So, yeah, look out for the next event posting, and I'll make sure you guys are well informed. And again, I'll start streaming more once I have more time. So, thanks, guys, and I'll catch you guys later.
Sounds good.
Cheers.
Mhm.